Oh, hello, and welcome to Al Dente Rigamortis. I'm Review Cultist.
I'm Mikey, the stand for evil.
And I'm the gamer in yellow.
And we're here to discuss those internet stories, most creepy and most pasta, and be critically silly doing it. And tonight we have Higyou-Sama. So I have returned to the Kawabana website to pull from their top 5 Japanese creepypasta list to bring us Higyou-Sama, which is a very strange one, even according to them. It doesn't really have an author. It's again one of those creepypastas that sort of is. It was posted anonymously, and Kawabana website has translated it to a format that we can read. So, us English speakers, anyway. But I will dive into the rundown for this one. So, Nair once went to his grandparents' chicken farm for summer vacation with his mother, brother, and sister. They were there for about a week, and while trying to sleep at night, Nair heard his grandpa leave the house at 11:30 p.m. and return at 12:05 a.m. every night. Eventually, Nair follows his grandpa after a few nights and finds that he's checking the incubator room or the incubator building of the farm and disposing of certain eggs before they have a chance to hatch, which they are very close to. They're very close to hatching at the time. Nair jump scares his grandpa when he makes a noise, and he tells his grandson he has to dispose of the bad eggs as they are about to hatch at midnight. Then he quickly tells his grandson to go back into the house and sleep. While leaving, Nair sees what looks like some toys by the building's doorway and decides to check that out later. So then we cut to the next day. And after Grandpa has come home, which is a very odd instance, for lunch, he's very drunk and very sleepy, so he just kind of passes out. So the kids go outside, and eventually Nair and his brother check out what that toy was from earlier, and that's when he discovers that it's a series of things: a painted over hand mirror, a clay statue, and some plastic flowers. Nair's brother goes into the incubator while Nair is looking at this stuff, and eventually Nair joins him. And that's when he notices that the bin that all the bad eggs were being disposed in from the night before has a bunch of strips of paper with markings on them just stuck to it. The brother sees an egg hatch and draws Nair's attention to that. As Nair looks himself, he finds a chick that has hatched with human eyes. Paralyzed with fear and shock, he watches the chick fall to the floor and then run off outside to the west. Nair's brother is in some sort of unresponsive daze, and eventually the grandparents arrive to Nair's screaming and such. Grandpa takes the things that were by the door and rush out in the direction that Nair points, where the chicken ran off to, while Grandma checks Nair's brother. Something definitely has happened to him, according to Grandma's reaction, and when Nair's mom shows up with sister in tow, and they see what's happening, she begins to cry because apparently the brother looked into the eyes of Higyou-Sama, which is the chick, according to the grandmother. Grandpa returns unsuccessfully in what he was trying to do, and when Nair asks about Higyou-Sama, he explains that the chick born at noon or at midnight turn into monsters, and so they have to be killed before they hatch. The monster at midnight is far worse than what occurred at noon, and to Nair's brother. Then we cut to some years later. While in high school, Nair meets a kid who also has a family that with a chicken farm, and he asks them if they've ever heard about Higyou-Sama. And the kid just kind of brings up this thing called an iwashi chicken. Apparently, with the advent of automation, machines can now deal with chicks about to be born at noon and midnight. So that's interesting. Cut again. And it's 20 years later from the incident itself. And the brother seems fine. He's even an elementary school teacher. And they still go to their grandparents' place to this day. But one thing is for sure, they are absolutely still a family. Finn? All right, so I suppose we should move on to everyone tolerates the Grammar Inquisitions. At this point,
We're gonna say because they have to.
because I have to. Yeah.
You don't really have a choice. I mean, you could skip ahead, but don't tell anyone. That's the secret move.
Also, future me will never put in a go to this timestamp to skip the Grammar Inquisition. No, we separate the wheat from the chaff in the show. That's how we know our we have devoted listeners, is when they can get through the Grammar Inquisition. Anyway, gonna start with this one here. None of the lights were on. I could only rely on the red light coming out from the incubators. So I feel like this should read a little bit differently. So I kind of slightly rewrote it. I tweaked the sentence a little bit. None of the lights were on, save for the red glow coming out of the incubators. Just like it really irked me. It's like none of the lights were on. I could only rely on the red light coming out of the incubators. It's like, okay, I understand what you're trying to say. Like the main lights aren't on, but like
or just simplify it to the only light that was on was the red light from the incubators, making the whole room dark, black, and red and evil looking.
Yeah, or just like really low light, because that's what happens when you have red light on. It's why they use red lights for what are they called? Those the photo rooms.
Mm-hmm.
Photo development rooms. Yeah. Anyway, gonna move on to the next one here. He returned around 11 a.m., kind of drunk, and joined us at the table. So I'm not sure if this is kind of a nitpick. This story is sort of told rather casually, as if somebody is recounting this story to us. But I feel like it should still be he returned around 11 a.m., kind of drunk, and joined us at the dinner, and joined us at the table. Just like in the story itself, it's kinda like the slang that we all use for kind of, and it's not technically dialogue, so I don't want to give it a pass.
Suppose, yeah.
Yeah. But that's the only one that I really kind of found. So, Mikey, the E stands for evil. Take it away.
All right. Well, I didn't find much of anything. So I just have my conjunction junction.
All right. And next stop, conjunction junction. Doot, doot.
It was the countryside, so they always got up super early and went to bed super early as well. But that night I was again unable to sleep, and at the same time someone went outside and then returned a short while later. But then I realized something was off. It wasn't a toy. It was a hand mirror, but the mirrored side had been painted with some type of vermilion-colored paint. But what were they used for? And its eyes. They were the eyes of a human. It jumped off the shelf in the incubator and hit the ground with a thud. It didn't even shake its head. It just briskly walked away. It ran out of the incubator room and turned west, disappearing into the distance. It looked at my brother. Drool running Drool was running down his chin and his eyes were blank. But there was something different about him. It's been over 20 years since we all lived together as a family, but we're still absolutely a family. Finn.
That
Okay.
mirror with human eyes. Just
That changed a lot. Like he couldn't
really
he couldn't
did.
sleep. He heard someone going in and out of the house, and he thought that it was a toy that was alive. I guess he just watched Toy Story, but
Yeah.
it turned out it was a hand mirror that has human eyes, and the hand mirror jumped out of the incubator and did all that.
Mm-hmm.
Context, man, changes a
Yeah.
lot.
Mm-hmm.
And for those unaware, Mikey does these strings of sentences to highlight all of these sentences in the story that start with words that they probably shouldn't, like its, ands, or buts, because there's always better words.
All right. And next up is the grammar in yellow.
Indeed.
It's the
Maybe-
first time I've ever actually addressed it as such.
That's true. Maybe my grandfather or grandmother was going to check on the chickens out in the field, I thought. So if he's actually thinking that in his head, I don't know if he would specifically say my grandfather. Wouldn't he just say grandfather? Like there's no need to specify to call him out as his grandfather, like there's other grandfathers in the area too.
I hear you. Yeah. Like I was gonna counter you, and it's like, I mean, I've heard people like say like my grandfather, like for a story and stuff like that, but like, yeah, no, it should probably be like grandfather, like just grandfather, not my grandfather.
I guess. That being said, like if I'm talking to you about, for example, my dad,
Yeah.
I would refer to him as my dad.
Yeah.
Even like because I wouldn't call your dad because that'd be weird.
Yeah, or like if
I
I'm
only
telling
did
you,
that
it's like,
once.
yeah, like, or if like I'm telling you like a story, it's like, yeah, my nono has a greenhouse that I get figs from every time I go over there.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's like that kind of thing. Like it's like, so I like, you know, the who, like the possessive the whose grandfather it is. Or like not like I wouldn't say like Nono's grandfather, because like he's not your Nono, he's mine.
Yeah, maybe I'm gonna counter my own grammar there. I don't know.
Yeah. Also, were you gonna mention the fact that like they use was and not were?
No.
Because I just like while you were like reading it out, I was like, that was should be a word, because it says maybe it was my grandfather or grandmother.
No, actually, because he's
No?
thinking this in the moment.
Ah,
This
you're
is
right.
A
Damn it.
quote of what he is thinking.
Damn it.
Wahaha.
Yes.
God damn it. All right, moving on.
Yes.
Free of the paralysis that had gripped me, I could finally move again. It looked at my brother. Drool was coming down his chin, and his eyes were blank. Called his name over and over again. He didn't respond. So I feel like it should be, I looked at my brother? Drool was running down his chin and everything? Because at this point, the chick left, and it's gone. And then all of a sudden it says, it looked at my brother?
Oh.
Yeah, because Nair
Huh.
looked at
Yeah.
his brother
Yeah.
and saw that Drool was running down his chin and everything.
Yeah, that's definitely a grammar position. Like that's
Surprised
definitely
I'm the
an
only
error.
one that got that.
I must have like read over it.
Mhm. And that's all I got.
All right. Then I suppose we'll move on to actual thoughts. So first thing I wanted to address here is this sentence. On the 5th day, I did my best to conserve energy so I could stay awake and follow whoever it was when they went outside. Okay, I know what they're intending to mean here, like the kid is just trying to stay awake and stuff like that. But it really does sound like the kid is actually an android, like conserving his energy. to stay functional. Like I just suddenly imagine Wally like having to consider like going into low power mode or ironically sleep mode to conserve his energy. Yeah, this is obviously from the 2060s or 2070s. Clearly,
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. God, this would make a good Shadowrun game. Sorry, Mikey. Anyway, moving on. Like it's even got if we're gonna add the cyberness to it, it even got like the occultism stuff to it. Anyway, yeah. Moving on to the next thing here. Everything was dim, like the kind of darkness you might see if you got in under a kotatsu blanket. So I looked up kotatsu blanket on Google Images.
Me too.
And I would have loved this as a kid. Like, heck, I want it now.
I was just gonna say that myself. Like, kid, I want that shit now.
Yeah. So, for anybody who doesn't want to just like Google it, it's basically a bed table, like the kind of table that you'd like put on like over your blanket while you're sleeping or while you're lying down or sitting up in bed to like have food or drink or whatever on this table. But it's like because it's in like the Japanese culture, it's on the ground. Or
I was going to say it's not in a bed; it's on the ground.
Yeah, it's on the floor. And so there's a table, but then there's a blanket underneath, like the hard top part of it that flower out like almost like a tent, and allows you to like basically like do whatever you're doing on the table, and then when you're tired, you just go to sleep.
Yeah.
And it's like basically a pre-made blanket fort.
Yeah, like it's
like
lays out in all directions around the table.
Yeah, and like it's elevated, so like a kid could definitely like just like sneak into the center of it and like underneath it and just have that as like their own little domain.
Yeah, like a pre-made fort.
Yeah. I could definitely like honestly this part here like kind of brought me up. It's like the story like could really be used as game fodder for a Little Fears game. But I'll put a pin on that for now. I've got a few other things before we go to that. Or before I dive deep into, how this story could be used for game fodder. But moving on. I definitely saw a chick inside the egg. Cracks were forming along the outside, like it was just about to hatch. I could imagine what the mess looked like inside the bin, so I didn't want to see it. But my grandfather quickly covered it with a lid anyway. So as I was reading this part, I suddenly got some unexpected visceral horror like hinted at here. Like I was like I love chicken and eggs. Like I'm going to continue to eat them and love eating it. But just the insinuation of the contents of that metal bin in this moment, like I was suddenly grossed and creeped out by like just the insinuation of like how my imagination like concocted of like, oh yeah, that bin's full of like dead baby chickens and like broken shells and stuff like that have just been like thrown in there.
I don't think you enjoying cooked chicken has anything to do with like baby chickens, because you don't eat baby chickens.
No, well, actually, you do in some cultures. In some parts of the world, you do actually eat unhatched like chicken fetuses.
I'm sure that's fine.
It is. It's just a different culture. But like, no, it was just like I loved eating chicken and I love like eggs, and I'm not going to stop like because I got grossed out here. But this was a good little like just kind of a hinted at visceral horror. Like it didn't like go into explicits of like all the dead babies, like their broken necks and limbs, like and their decomposing like bodies on the rotting yolk and stuff like that. Like it didn't go into that like grossness and offal. It just hints at it, and I still got a reaction from just it being hinted at, and so like okay, I appreciate that. Apparently, I'm the only one because nobody else is reacting. So,
I mean, yeah, I also wondered how gross the bucket was, but I'm glad they didn't go there. Yeah,
it was tasteful.
Just like
tasteful. Yeah, tasteful visceral horror. Love to see it. Anyway, moving on. He ate some white rice with tea and pickled vegetables, and at some point fell asleep face down on the table. We thought it would be bad manners to wake him up, so we left him there and went outside to play. Is it? Like, it's fine. Grandpa just had a stroke and died. Let's just go outside and play. Like that the way I saw this in my head, like transpiring, was like Grandpa just like face planted like onto the table. And like
I'm sure he's still breathing.
I feel like I would maybe not how I would have reacted to this. Like I probably would have like contacted, like called mom, and it's like, hey, dad, Grandpa's passed out on the table. Like just head first.
Different culture,
Maybe you should.
I guess.
Yeah,
It's like
that's true.
The
Like
station. I already forgot the name of it.
Kitsuragi Station.
Yeah, the first lady who was like, "Oh, I didn't want to like." She was like apologizing to the police for something she didn't do and stuff because she didn't want to bother anyone. It's the same sort of thing here. The kid didn't want to bother his grandfather, so just let him sleep. Clearly needed.
Yeah, well, clearly. Yeah, well, I mean, he had been drinking a lot that morning and then got there. I think you're right because I feel like from what I've watched and like seen of like Japanese culture, it does feel like there is a precedence for like being very polite and like like the manners are very important.
Yeah.
So especially when you're a kid in that culture, so it's instilled a lot more heavily, I think, than for us.
Mm-hmm. Like he didn't have to go ask his mom, be like, "Should I wake him up?" Like he already knew. Like, oh
no, he's sleeping. Like it would be rude to try and wake him up, or it'd be rude to like call mom about it and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's let him be. Moving on to the next one here.
Actually, it's kind of funny that you brought this up. I watched Game Grumps play a game called Consider It at one point, where it's a Japanese game where like you can be as considerate or inconsiderate as you want, and there's like an image on the screen, and it's a Wii game, so you're using your Wii game. It doesn't matter either way. There's this one where this Japanese gentleman is like giving like a slideshow presentation, and this fly is open, like down and wide open, and the gameplay mechanic is like pulling your cursor towards his crotch, and you have to like physically keep it away. Like you don't want to bring it up and just like let him do his presentation because you don't want to call him out on it. It's the same sort of thing with this.
Yeah, you don't want to humiliate him in front of the group, like being polite and such. Yeah. Again, it's that kind of. I think it's that culture of like, like don't call somebody out on something. Like,
yeah.
But yeah, I'll move on to the next thing here. A chick was inside, but something about it was different than the others. Looking closer, unlike the other chicks, this one wasn't shaking at all, nor was it chirping. And its eyes, they were the eyes of a human. Okay. So I was like, wait, what does a chicken eye actually look like anyway? Like I'd never really thought of it, so I Googled it. And at first, I
hate to say it, there's an image at the top of the creepypasta.
Well, yeah, they're of the chick. I totally gapped about that, but like I was like curious, like because about actual like chicken eyes and stuff. I was like, well, wait, like what's like are they that different from human eyes? Let's take a look. And like when I Googled it, I was like, okay, that kind of could be mistaken for human eyes. Like they're a little bit more orange and stuff like that. And that's until I saw an image someone had posted on Reddit Creepy of a human with a chicken in the same image, and they had swapped the eyes. That is the most like, and that's when I realized the true horror of that situation. And I'm going to show my co-hosts this terrifying image that I found, because if I have to sit through this nightmare fuel, you have to sit through this nightmare fuel.
Damn
so it's going to be in the nightmare fuel section. So,
also, I hate to say it, but like, how do you think that baby chicks' eyes look like human eyes? All the images I see, they're just pure black.
I went with I googled chicken, like actually like
fully grown.
So I got a lot of adult chickens, not chicks.
But this is all baby chickens.
I know, but whatever. Just look at the damn image.
I don't want to.
Do it.
Oh yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, it's like, oh god, it's so disturbing to me.
It's way easier to look at the chicken. The chicken's just kind of chill.
Yeah. Oh man. Sorry, I just like that unintentional, just like looking it up and it's like, oh god, why? Why would you do this? I definitely think like most of it also is like it's less from the chicken and it's more from the human having chicken eyes.
Yes, of course.
But it's funny because like when I looked at a chicken, like when I looked at like chicken eyes, I was like, okay, that could be human, kind of. And then like you put it onto an actual person's eyes, and it's like, nope,
Mhm.
that is not supposed to be that way. So yeah, mother, he didn't. My grandmother sadly nodded yeah,
Really?
sadly nodded her head. My mother pulled my younger brother into her arms and began crying. He just stared blankly. My sister looked at him with confusion and fear in her eyes. But when she saw our mother cry, she began too. My grandfather returned shortly thereafter. It's no good. I wasn't in time. He sadly shook his head. So at this point, while I was reading the story, I thought I realized what had happened. Like the Higyou-Sama had like simply taken the brother's vision, and like that's why its eyes suddenly were human. um, and
Oh.
grandpa had ran off to perform some kind of like counter ritual to reverse the effects. Now, that's apparently not what happened,
No,
and
not at all.
I've got more on that later. But I'm salvaging this little note here that I was going to delete because I realized it wasn't the case, by saying that I do feel like this story would make for great gaming fodder. Like knee-jerk reaction, like I said earlier, little fears, and you're all siblings, and this happens to one of your like either to one of you or like your NPC sibling.
Mm-hmm.
But you could also use this where you're esoteric like adults using fringe, nigh folkloric rituals to gain power or stop supernatural threats, a la a game like Unknown Armies. And because I've listened to Unknown Armies. Unknown Armies is like a post-human or like postmodern like supernatural magic using sort of situation where like all the magical rituals and stuff like that are like, and all the like the different like character archetypes, it's pulling from folklore, but it's also like pulling from like modern stuff, like using components that you have on you, not like ancient ritualistic like components, like rather than using like purified salt from like that's been aged and like you get from an occult store. No, you don't have time for that. You go get some like powdered bleach for your ritual, or like perform like a certain like perform some kind of like humiliating act to get a boost to your power level to perform a ritual. Like the way the grandfather like runs off with like the mirror and the plastic flowers, like modern, like the kind of more modern plastic flowers, and like the clay statue, in the hopes of like stopping the Higyou-Sama, very much reminded me of like Unknown Armies. Also looking like kind of reevaluating like kind of like looking at the stuff that he did have there, the paper pamphlets that were like sticking to the bin with the writing. That's definitely like the Japanese like warding sigils that he had on the bin to like basically keep the bad eggs at bay in the bin. But also, I just realized the vermilion the vermilion paint that was on the mirror, on the hand mirror. Well, hand mirrors and mirrors in general in Japanese occultism are a big thing because like you can see it allows you to see ghosts when you look through a mirror. However, it's also a window to their world. So they would use vermilion, which is a red paint, to protect themselves from evil spirits, because red in Japanese occultism is a color that wards off evil spirits. So yeah, there's a lot of folklore like nods of like going on in this story. And like weird, it's a country, like a sort of a countryside farm in like rural Japan, or like in a rural part of Japan. So like of course they're going to have like older folkloric ways of like stopping ritual, or like stopping evil spirits or like these creatures from doing harm. And that actually brings me to my next kind of inspiration for this, for a game fodder, is use the RPG Vaesen. And instead of Nordic folklore horror, we move it over to we move the setting to Japan. Because Vasen in Nordic cultures is basically like spiritual beings or creatures of the supernatural, and like Japan has that in yokai and their various other spirit creatures. So basically, it's kind of a different name for the same sort of category of creature or supernatural entities, like the Higyou-Sama. So, but yeah, that was my little game fodder rant. I'll move on.
They're all good points. We have to fight you on that.
Okay, cool. Well, no, I just also, if you guys had anything else to add to it, like to the gaming fodder thing, like, no?
No.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
Welcome. You know way more about this shit than we do.
I guess, yeah. But yeah, I'll move on to my next thing, which is a little bit funnier. I regret so many things after doing a deep dive of the story. Starting with this comment, starting with this quote. Later, when I was a high school student, one of my classmates also had a family that ran a chicken farm. I asked him if he had ever heard of Higyou-Sama, but at first he just looked at me confused. Then he said, "Ah, you mean the Iwashi chicken?" So I went down the Google hole again, like for the third time, for the last time. Not really. I Googled and to see if I could find anything like a translation of this, like another translation of this story. As I tried to find more information about Higyou-Sama and Iwashi chickens. So, firstly, it seems like the Higyou-Sama is like a changeling in Western cultures. So, like, it swaps with the person or like steals their soul when they hatch and look into a victim's eyes at that moment. So that seems to be what might be wrong with the brother. Like he's been body swapped or replaced by this creature. And so he was actually the chicken that ran off, like his soul.
But he was responding in a manner that he would be.
Yeah, because he's become kind of like a mimic, or like he's been like that's what changelings do. They when they swap bodies, when they swap places with somebody, that person or their soul gets sent to like the spirit world, and the spirit creature that's now possessing the body or taking the place of the body tries to act like that person, because he was acting like his brother. He was acting like the brother, but there was something off about him.
Yeah.
And the story is sort of wishy-washy on like what that difference is, even by the end. And then I tried to look up Iwashi chicken, and I really wish I hadn't.
Oh.
So there's another translation of the story on a website called HRS or HRStoryChannel.com. It's another sort of like a website that tries to translate Japanese creepypastas and urban legends. And they call the Iwashi chicken the Iwashidori, as it was and in that translation, Iwashidori means, according to their story, it means, because it's done in brackets, like the translation of what it means, bird of word, as in bird is the word.
Really? That's where you're going with that? This is the horrible. This is the horrible revelation that you're dropping on us. Is that the bird is the word?
I hated that I saw that. I was like, why?
There's going to be some absolutely horrible thing.
No, it's horrible in like, really. But I don't even know how accurate that translation is, because first off, like the HR Story Channel website, like version of this story, is sort of done in heavily broken English. Like it's almost it's almost impossible to read. Like it's just sort of like very garbled. But when I tried to find a proper translation for Iwashidori, which I was like, there's no way that's bird of the word. I need to confirm that. It does not mean bird of word.
Yeah, I did a search on it too. The only thing I came up with is something like squid related or something like that.
Yeah, Iwashidori means to remove squid in Japanese.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know. I was just left confused by, like, because online, like, Higyou-Sama, like, this story, it pops up a couple of times, but there doesn't seem to be any information that I could find of, like, any more information aside from what's in this story of Higyou-Sama, like the creature itself, or the urban legend. Now, again, there's a lot of websites that did come up that were just straight up Japanese, and I was like, I can't, I'm gonna go down like a really big rabbit hole to find that kind of, like, if I'm gonna try and use like Google Translate on all these websites and stuff. So I kind of left it, and I left myself confused. But if someone out there who's listening to us is more familiar with Japanese horror, folklore, and urban legends and culture on this situation, would like to help us out and clarify, like, if you have any like direction to give me of like where I can find more information on Higyou-Sama and like the urban legend or like the legend around it, rather than just this story alone, I'd be really interested in it. Like, maybe it is just like for this story that it was made for, or maybe it's an actual like urban legend or yokai story. But yeah, trying to find anything about Higyou-Sama and Iwashi Chicken outside of this story kind of left me very confused. Is all I'm gonna kind of leave that with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just kind of left it to it being just something made for the story because I couldn't find anything in my 1 second I took to Google things.
Yeah, I did a little bit of a deeper dive because I was like, I was genuinely interested in, like, I've been genuinely interested in all these like Japanese creepypastas that we've been coming across. So I wanted to see if there's any more like information I could find about that and glean. But I failed in this case. So, but moving on to the next thing here. At any rate, these days technology has advanced, and there are sensors and timers on the incubation machines that automatically dispose of eggs that are about to hatch at 12 p.m. and 12 a.m. Man, who knew poultry husbandry was so dangerous before the advent of automation?
Right?
At least in rural Japanese folklore. Like, because you think about, like, Grandpa's been doing that for years. Like, going out there at 11:30 till 12:05 around noon and at midnight every day since they've had this chicken farm. And then maybe his father was doing it before that, and his father, and his father. It just thank God for automation. This is like the one case, like, thank God for automation, saving people's souls from creepy, weird, obscure yokai.
This makes me wonder what happens if the power goes out around noon.
Oh God, there's like one guy on like at the industrial like chicken farm, like, or chicken warehouse farm place. That's like the power goes out and just like Satoshi protocol Higyou-Sama. I was like, oh, just starts running, like just running halfway across the hall, like the warehouse, like checking all like the rows and rows and rows and rows and rows of incubators.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a vermilion painted like hand mirror in hand, like just ready, like and like a bin that's just like kind of a carry bin that's
it's like strapped to his chest,
plastered
like a baby carrier.
Like a papusa.
Yeah, there you go. That's the word.
It's just completely covered in like protective sigils, like those strips of paper with protective sigils on them.
Yep. And as funny as all this is, realistically though, the backup generators would just kick in.
Satoshi's just running. Honestly, he's not running to like check the incubator. She's just running to running to the backup generator to get it started. Because for some reason they haven't gotten that automated.
No, of course not. Why would they?
They need somebody to get out there to like do a pull cord.
Yeah.
Oh
Ah, shit's out of gas.
Oh god, I got the gas tank's like running out of time. It's almost 11. It's almost 11:45. Yeah, no, just like, my god. Yeah, we like to have fun here.
Occasionally.
All right, and then to my final actual thought stuff. I still return to I'm really not sure how you say this. Shimene.
However we say it, it will be wrong.
It's going to be wrong.
Yeah, so just pick one and roll with it.
Yeah. I still return to Shimane every year. My brother is now working as an elementary school teacher. I don't even remember when he used to be like before all this happened anymore. It's been over 20 years since we all lived together as a family. But we're still absolutely a family. That's the last line of the story, and I was like, what? Where's the horror payoff? Where's the zinger? Like this is a weird like happy ending thing. Like it sounds like everything turned out all right. Did someone die? Did grandpa? Did grandma? Why did they have to pull out early? Like previously, like when grandpa and grandma were like had come back from trying to get the Higyou-Sama and failing, like grandpa immediately says like we need to pull out the mourning clothes, like mourning as in like mourning at a funeral kind of thing, not mourning as in start of the day.
Yes.
Like what's wrong with Nair's brother? Like doing a deeper dive elsewhere reveals a little bit more about what possibly transpired, but otherwise the story sort of ends anticlimactically for me. Like what the fuck like happened? It's like I sort of got that feeling, that vibe at the end here where it's just like, we know with absolute certainty that the truth behind Bigfoot and his existence is definitely maybe. Like that kind of like, what? Like it's sort of like non-committal like ending. It's like it's been 20 years since we all lived as a family. We still live as a family. We're absolutely a family. Like what? So
the way it's worded, it almost sounds like they're kind of like lying to sort of hide it, you know? You're like, yeah, we're totally a family. It's all normal, right?
Yeah, like I guess it is sort of like the horror here is that like the brother is now like something happened to the brother that he's still the brother, but he's different. Like something is off about him.
Mm-hmm.
But
and yet
they
he
can't
grows up
do
to
anything
be like
about
a teacher and everything. Like
yeah, like so what's the problem? Like it's like it was such a weird ending to the story, which like up until this very end, I was like, yeah, okay, this is pretty cool, like creepy, like folklore farm horror going on here in rural Japan, and then like the ending has like no horror zinger whatsoever. It just sort of peters out for me. So yeah, I was left rather disappointed at the end.
Mhm.
suppose that's fair.
But yeah. But that's my actual thoughts. So Mikey, D stands for evil.
All right. My first actual thought is something you just brought up at the end there. I'll say the quote anyway. Grandma, I don't know who it'll be, but it'll happen within the next 2 or 3 days. Can you get out the morning clothes and air them out for a bit? So, I was totally expecting a funeral of some kind.
Yeah.
Based on that, and we don't get it. It just, they allude to it, but then nothing.
Yeah.
Did the postman down the street suddenly die? Like, did the neighbor 2 doors down have a heart attack or something? Like,
yeah, on completely unrelated notes. Oh yeah, we should get the morning clothes out. You'll
Yeah.
be fine.
My neighbor that I just hung out with, like that morning, he we were drinking and he just died. He was getting up there in years. He just died. Has nothing. Oh yeah, and yeah, no, don't worry, your brother's gonna be fine. Yeah, it honestly seemed like there was like there's something missing. Like there's like a gap that we're missing here.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. All right. So my next actual thought here is something that I would like to be more sort of fleshed out. And as it is, it's not like it uses assumptions.
Yeah.
So the quotes here. The first one is, "Chicks born when the sun is in the highest point of the sky, or when it's the deepest part of the night, have a certain role. So that's why we have to kill them." And then later, "At any rate, these days technology has advanced, and there are sensors and timers on the incubation machines that automatically dispose of eggs that are about to hatch at 12 p.m. and 12 a.m. The problem with that is that 12 noon is not high noon, which is the when the sun is at the highest point in the sky.
Is it
So
not?
no, because it moves, like that's why we have daylight savings and such.
Yeah.
So like there is some swing variance there, which it makes sense because earlier in the story it says that the grandfather left at 11:30 to go do the chickens.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got the time period right, but to state that the automated system only checks at 12 a.m. and 12 p.m. means that they're missing a lot of demon chickens.
So basically, like in between daylight savings time switching, the variance of it actually being at the top of the sky or peak of the sky. What was the term for that? Sorry.
At the highest point in the sky, so high noon.
Yeah, for it actually being at high noon could be 12:01 one day and then 12:10 a little bit later. Like as it goes on, it gets a different day, different time. Yeah.
Also, I just Googled it. There is no daylight savings time in Japan.
Well,
do not change in Japan.
Still, like, it would be nice for there to be like a sundial, because the sundial will tell you when high noon is.
Fair. Yeah.
But it's not even alluded to that the grandparents have a sundial. Like,
it'd be cooler
I wonder
too, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if it was a little bit more like the Nair, because we never address that. Like, yeah, we never got a name for this character, but I guess it doesn't really matter. Yeah, Nair like is out of context here, so he's like, why is my grandma or grandpa going like to this like obscure time? It's not even like noon. It's not exactly noon. It's not exactly midnight. And then. But it's because like they're using like again an older way of telling time, or like time, like figuring out like the highest, like when the sun is in the highest point in the sky, or when it's the darkest time of night, rather than just like simply because a lot of like again like a lot of these stories like when they're like about a certain thing, it's like usually like like midnight, because midnight is like the spooky hour, or like it's a quantifiable spooky time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, like I said, I'd just like it to be a little more fleshed out, because the demons, they just care whether it's high noon or I guess low midnight.
Yeah,
because that's a term now.
Yep, it is now.
Yeah,
we're gonna have now just want like a supernatural gunfight at low midnight. Just like a vampire gunslinger like movie where like just call it low midnight.
You have to do that now.
Anyway, so that's the end of my actual thoughts.
Cool. All right, then gamer.
That'd be my turn. So first off, the art, that's totally there.
The
Just as
photo
a
of the chick.
little baby chick. After reading the story, I was wondering why there wasn't a human eye photoshopped onto it, though I guess it would be a spoiler if that was the case.
Yeah,
I mean, you could put it at the end, though, maybe?
you
But
could.
For me, the way that I read these stories is I open up the story, I give it a quick scroll to know what I'm getting myself into, and in doing so, I would spoil that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So you're fucked either way.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. That's how it is. We always stayed there for about a week, and I had fun while my grandparents doted on me. Or dotted on me? I don't know the pronunciation of that.
doted.
Okay. Either way, I've never heard that word before.
Oh, okay.
To dote on is to give a lot of love or attention to, apparently.
Yep.
So I learned a thing.
Mhm.
And I never got enough love and attention, so I've never heard that word.
You're apparently never doted on.
No, never. It rose at 4 a.m. before the first rooster's call of duty. I mean, call of the day, sorry.
Son of a bitch.
So the roosters here just like blare their game on a loudspeaker, basically, like they're playing Call of Duty to wake everyone up. They're like cussing and yelling at each other. Not at other rooster gamers doing the same thing around the country.
Yeah.
That's what the roosters' Call of Duty is.
Sure.
Yeah. Makes sense to me. A weird world to live in.
Yep. But here we are.
So then later on, the little baby chick gets hatched, and it's weird. Little brother's frozen. Neru's temporarily frozen, but he's okay. I was hoping that it was going to explain what the hell happened, but it doesn't. I know we kind of brushed on that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It really needed to be something happen. It's all left to assumptions, and I hate doing that.
Honestly, I'm with you on this one because this story doesn't explain what a Higyou-Sama is. I had to go elsewhere to find out anything about it.
Mm-hmm. Something as simple as showing that the brother did not live to have a normal life anymore. Like he had to go into an insane asylum, or after that point he wasn't himself anymore and he wasn't able to function properly and take care of himself anymore. Like something. But he grew up and got a career as a teacher, and
yeah,
what the hell?
And it's just like it's like the best way I can describe what I think is actually what the fear or what the creepiness of this is supposed to try and invoke is it looks like my brother, it speaks like my brother, it acts like my brother, but I know inherently there's something there that is not my brother.
Yeah, but that could be simply just he saw something weird, so he's acting weird because of that. Because scary things and traumatic things change people, but not necessarily in a weird way.
Yeah.
It's supernatural way.
He's an elementary school teacher. Only one out of 5 of his classes someone goes missing. Mysteriously. There's nothing even malicious or in his actions when he it's just his brother grew up to become an elementary school teacher. He's fine. It's just he's different. He's different now. He was changed from that incident. I'm not going to explain in this story why he's different. He's just different.
Trust me.
Yeah, it's
did the grandfather actually succeed in running away with the stuff? No, because he never found it.
Yeah, he came back and he's like, I wasn't there. I wasn't able to do it in time. So I imagine he went out there with the stuff to try and get the soul back or counter the transfer or whatever it was. Because again, I'm just basing that off of what I've read elsewhere. The story doesn't actually tell you what Higyou-Sama does.
And wait, you're right. The grandfather says, I wasn't able to do it in time. So he found it.
Yeah.
Because he did. Otherwise, he said, I couldn't get there in time. It's lost. I couldn't find it. But he found it, and he said he couldn't do it in time. So whatever he was doing, he didn't do it early enough. So the effects, whatever they may be, stuck.
Are irreversible now, apparently.
Yeah, right from the get-go, didn't he say, don't look at it because you go blind?
Yeah.
Is the
So that's why I
brother
thought, like,
blind?
yeah. Well, that's what I thought. That's why, like, we had that like part there at the time. I was like, okay, so it's like some kind of like, yeah, and like we get that from the grandfather at like the night prior, and then the day, like that day, like the brother looks at looks at the chick, and then is in like this daze and is irresponsive, and like his eyes are blank. I was like, oh, and the chick has human eyes. Like, oh, so these Higyou-Sama is a chick that is born at noon, and if you look at it like in the eye, it steals your vision. Like that's how I logically came to the conclusion of.
Yeah.
But then that wasn't the case, apparently.
I mean, it's entirely possible he's actually blind and they're just not saying it. Like, he
Yeah,
could very
maybe.
easily become a teacher while blind. That's not
Yeah.
something that would hinder him. But
Well, and
there's no mention of it. Like, not even like after it happened when I called his name, he would look in my direction but not at me. You know, like something to say that
Well,
he can't
actually,
really see. Or he would say
yeah,
he can talk still.
yeah. Well, like that's what I even like earlier, like later on, like after like the event happens, and like the grandparents and the parents are like consoling or like hugging him and stuff like that, and he's just like looking off into space. I was like, wait, is he still blind? Like, is he blind? Like, because he's saying, like he's saying it's like grandpa, you're hurting me, like when he's hugging him really hard. But he's like, so I was like, it's like, does he not like? Are we just like he's just looking over like his grandfather's shoulder and like not looking at him or not looking at anything because he can't see? Like, again, the story like, really invoked in me that they like the Higyou-Sama just steals your vision, like. But then I'm being slapped on the wrist. Like, no, that's not the case by the end of the story. So yeah, I mean that's a cool idea too. Like that's still worrying. Like that's still terrible. Like,
Oh, for sure.
and the story insinuates that a lot. But yeah,
I mean, does it insinuate a lot? It doesn't.
I mean, yeah, maybe. I mean, I'm maybe like, yeah, I'm
Pushing
drawing
our own assumptions onto it.
Yeah, but I mean the story didn't give us much to not otherwise. So
Yeah. Either way, that's the end of my notes until final thoughts.
Okay. So on to final thoughts. There are parts of the story I really do enjoy. The strangely creepy farm folklore horror angle. Like the just in the Japanese countryside, like that's really cool. Like that was a good setup. Like it's had a good setup for me. And like I brought up a couple of ideas for like game fodder that I feel like would be really good, like Little Fears, Unknown Armies, Vossen. There's other ones out there that you could also use. Like it's a good like setup, like a good seed idea for a scenario in that involving this like weird chicken monster thing. But for me, the big hampering issue is that this version of this seems to have gaps at the end and not a spooky payoff that I was able to really like tell off the bat. Like, even if the brother got swapped and is a monster now, well, it's been 20 years, and that person who looks like your brother, sounds like your brother, acts like your brother, and is not malicious in any way, in fact, has a really good job with children, and none of those children have gone missing as far as the story is telling us or not telling us.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably just your brother now. Like,
yeah,
I get that can be horrific, like in a disassociative way. Like, again, like there are people who like suddenly like dissociate from their relatives and stuff. Is like, that's not my family. Like that's not them. That's not them anymore. Like there's something different. Like that can be horrific. That can be terrifying. But the way it's presented in this story, it kind of comes out of left field at the very end. Like it comes right out of Left Town.
mm-hmm. Which is my favorite town, but man,
yeah. But yeah, so it's like that was my big issue. Was like the ending is sort of just like, wait, that's the ending. Like, so I'm gonna partially recommend it, but it's more my partial recommend is really more for the game fodder stuff than anything. It's not like as a story goes, like as a spooky tale, I really can't recommend it fully because the payoff is non-existent to me. So, but it had a good start. So, Mikey, D stands for evil.
All right. So, to really sum up the creepiness of the story, an egg hatches with a demon chicken, A kid is traumatized, the chicken runs away, and nothing happens.
Yeah, that was a better rundown than I did. Way more concise.
So, the biggest problem that this story faces is that nothing happens. Even the insinuation that they're going to have to go to a funeral in a couple days, it goes nowhere.
Yeah. Like you
And also the whole, oh, well, something happened to his brother, but again, it ends with him saying, oh, it's been 20 years and I've forgotten what my brother was like, so I guess that's my brother now. Like,
yeah.
So overall, I am not recommending this.
All right. And gamer.
So, one thing I feel with the story is the story can be kind of easily disproven if you're trying to think of it as an actual thing that happens. Especially if you're someone who grew up on a farm too, because I'm sure a lot of people around noon probably were like hatching chicks and stuff like that to no consequences and such.
Yeah.
Like there's an explanation now that they use tech to dispose of the eggs at noon and midnight and all that, but this would be such a widespread common knowledge thing at this point, you know? Be it in the real world or in the lore of the story, people would know. Like the parents know, the grandparents know. The kid is old enough to comprehend. Same with his little brother. Like, why didn't anyone tell them to stay away from the eggs without supervision?
Yeah.
And why did they lock the damn door? If it's this horrible of a outcome, if you look at it, you know?
Yeah.
Whatever this horrible outcome may be, actually, because we don't really know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Since you brought it up, like, I also remember that there's people that do, like, hobby hatching chickens.
Yep.
So...
I actually have a buddy just like a couple of hours up north that I visit, and he has a chicken coop in his backyard. And after reading the story, I sent him the link to the story. I was like, I'm watching you now. I'm watching for any strange like behavior from this point forward.
Yeah. It's such a, like I said, it's something that can be so easily disproven in real life. So there's no way that it's hard to get immersed into it. It's like, if the story was about, if you ate a sandwich that had like specific ingredients on it exactly at midnight, like you could just do that and nothing bad would happen, you know?
Yeah.
It's something that anyone can just disprove, which ruins any sort of immersion.
Yeah, there needs to be like some kind of signifier as to like why this is happening on this farm. Like, and not every chicken farm in the history of Japan. Like,
or the
even if this is just even if this is just like localized to Japanese like poultry husbandry, it still doesn't like that's still a huge number of chicken farmers that are doing this apparently, that have like this weird conspiracy of like of bad eggs. And the bad egg conspiracy.
Yeah. And if this is something that's just happening in Japan or even just on this one farm, why? Not why is it happening necessarily, but why do they continue to try raising chickens here if raising chickens here potentially does this? What is the benefit? Are they always like a award-winning farm? Like they're all of their stuff on the farm comes out awesome. It's just occasionally there can be some soul-stealing chickens that are born there. Like that's the downside. There's no
like it's like the rest of the eggs come out really nutritious, like super flavorful, the best thing that go on ramen noodles. Like just absolutely the best. But we do need to be vigilant when it comes to noon and midnight.
Yeah. Either really good eggs or really bad eggs.
Yeah. Like I again, you see this a lot of the time, and like honestly, like, part of me would be fine even if it's like if they just explain that, like, well, they keep doing this because they're stubborn in their old ways. Like, they've been egg farmers since before the curse was laid upon their property or this land or this area,
Mhm.
and like they could stop, but this is all they've ever known, so they're not going to stop.
Yeah.
They're just going to stay vigilant. Like, I could be fine with that, but yeah, like we need that needs to be in the story.
Yeah, like maybe their
Um,
ancestors, they like always were struggling with their farm, so they made a deal with an oni or something. I don't know if that's something that onis do,
that
because
probably that sounds about right.
I don't know much about Japanese culture, but made a deal with some supernatural being that blessed them with amazing results at their farm. But 12 is the bad time for anything on
Yeah.
a farm.
Or even better yet, there's a spirit that's been sealed away on the property, like from like hundreds of thousands of years ago, but it still has influence in this whole like Higyou-Sama situation. Like,
Yeah.
that's it's one bit of influence that it still has on the property, because like the priests and the priests were able to like bind it under a rock with a bunch of an egg-shaped rock under a hill, using like incantations and stuff like that. But and that's like just off the like on the corner of the property. However, because even though the creature is in the ground, like sealed away, it's still like tainted the world, tainted this area somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And so like maybe that's why the chickens like jump out of their, like, when they do grab a soul or whatever they do, they run off out into the west, like basically like
That's where the tomb is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like something like that. Like, again, we need more. Like, there's so many gaps in this story, I feel. Like,
that's another thing that was brought up that didn't go anywhere. Like, what the hell is out west? So specifically that he went over there. Like,
yeah.
Otherwise, it going to the west doesn't really matter. You know, he could have just said it went over there, but it was specifically called out to the west. So there's something there that we don't know.
Also, regarding the gaps here and the automation of the eggs that's just kind of like brought up, I wonder if like that was supposed to also say that, like, since then, because it did say like right off the hop that their grandparents no longer do eggs, no longer have a chicken farm, or they no longer farm chickens. They but it was like, if that hadn't been there, I wonder if like the automation part might have been mentioned as like, well, now 20 years later, my grandfather has gotten an automated system, so he doesn't have to go out there every night and watch it.
Yeah.
But like that, it's just like blanket statement, like the farming industry has automation now, so they can stop the bad eggs from hatching. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then visually, with the quote-unquote monster of the little baby chick with the human eyes, the horror in this is kind of in the same vein as DK mode for me.
Oh,
because in the story, it's being described as something horrible, but like in my head, I'm just seeing it as something silly. And yes, seeing a chick with human eyes or a human with its head 3 times its size and arms that reach the floor, seeing that in real life would be horrifying. But because this isn't real life and it's a story, it's hard to convey that through text, you know?
Yeah, you really have to kind of be already immersed into this in order to kind of get the creepiness and stuff like that. Because, like, again, I still think that DK mode, like, when it was presented in that story, like, I still found that kind of creepy, whereas you found it laughable.
Well, mainly because I played GoldenEye forever, and DK mode was the thing, so I immediately connected to the characters and that being all N64 graphic and everything, so it ruined it.
Yeah.
But yes.
But if it was like real people, yes. And yeah, like, again, I looked at this one, I was like, well, what's a chicken eye look like? Oh God, human and chicken eyes. Ah, why?
But again,
burn
that's
it
a
with
chicken
fire.
eye, not a baby chick eye.
I know, yeah.
Yes.
I'd still be fucking creeped out if like there's like also, like, here's the other creepy thing. Is it like a human eye as in like it's the same size as a chick's eye? Or is it like a human eye size and it's just like bulging out of the chicken's eye?
It's like very front heavy. His like beak's almost hitting the ground because of extra weight on his head.
because that's also creepy. Like I've seen like animes or like cartoons that like illustrate that, where like some characters like a runt like character that they have like these big bulging eyes, and like if I saw that in real life, that would be horrifying because
Yeah.
that's definitely a birth defect
Mhm.
kind of situation like that, and that's never like pleasant. So
But yeah, all in all, for the story, I can't really recommend it. I couldn't get immersed into it. The creepiness wasn't creepy or wasn't even explained. And the ending is a non-ending that doesn't end, it stops.
yeah, I think we can all agree that the story had potential, but then just had way too many gaps and dropped the ball by the end.
I feel like I say this almost every episode, or at least on all the ones that I don't recommend or partially or don't recommend the story. I tend to always also say the theories that we come up with the story are better than what we have. Like, adding stuff like that in that adds lore and reason behind everything makes the story a lot better. But that's not there, so I can't recommend that.
The story's and this story is a huge like example of like having big gaps in your story that like kind of are just left to the audience. And in this case, leaving your audience wondering is not a good thing because it had the adverse effect of like what that usually does for me, even where it's like it leaves me wondering, it's like, oh, it gives all these possibilities. Like I'm fine with that, but like this one is like, what?
You have to give us a taste. It's like it's like you brought out a huge silver platter, like with a huge lid on it, and put it out there, but it's way at the other side of the table. You can't even smell it, and they don't even give it to you. They just take it away. You don't even get to see what's in there.
Yeah, like they tell us that there's a whole platter of deviled eggs under that bin, and I'm like, yeah, deviled eggs. I love that.
No,
and then it's like,
no, here is your food. That's all they say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, here's your food. What kind of food? Is it something egg related? No.
Where are you going?
Food. Come back. I want my food. I'm hungry.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get you. So, yeah, I guess bottom line, none of us are really recommending this one. Like, I'll partially recommend. I'm only partially recommending it for game fodder because, like, I like the stuff that's in the story, like the stuff that we do get at the beginning, is a good setup for a horror story and a horror scenario. It's just the story itself didn't follow through with that for spookiness for me. So yeah, like I'm honestly going to say, like, as a story itself, not a game fodder, no recommendations. But yeah, but that has been this week's episode. So if you like what you heard, or if you didn't, leave us a comment in the comment section below where this gets posted, whether it be on Podbean, Facebook, YouTube, or Tumblr. You can also send us emails at aldenterigamortis@gmail.com. That's ALDENTERIGAMORTIS@gmail.com. Where you can also leave us suggestions for other creepypastas, urban legends, SCPs. You creep it, we'll peep it. Yeah. We'll peep it like chickens. Woo! Like because little peeps.
Oh yes, the little
it has a
marshmallow thing.
Double entendre today.
Yes. Those were weaponized in South Park, I believe.
Ah, cool.
Where like you put a whole case of them in the microwave and it explodes and kills everyone in the room.
Oh. All right. And if you'd like to talk to us on Twitter, Mikey is at the East Ends for Evil. The Gamer in Yell is at the Gamer in Yell, but without that W because his name is very long.
Yeah.
And I'm at Review Cultist. And if you'd like to help support our show financially, you can go to Patreon. Look up El Dente Rigor Mortis and select the back tier you'd like to support us at. We have $2 and $5 tier with special episodes, early access, extra content. To our patrons that are helping support the show, thank you guys immensely. You're helping keep those hosting bills at bay, and we very much appreciate that. And to our listeners and the translators of these stories, thank you immensely, because without your listenership, it'd be like screaming into the void. And without these stories getting posted and placed online and then translated by people so that other people who speak different languages can enjoy and read these stories, thank you immensely. Because again, like, even though we didn't recommend this story, it has potential as in some capacity. So thank you.
It wasn't painful to read like some stories are.
Yeah, and again, if we had read this from the one website that's just like it was just broken English translation, it would have been pretty rough. It would have been a whole different thing entirely. So thank you, Kawabana, for for putting some work into the translation of the story. Putting some finesse into the translation of the story, at least.
Mhm.
But yeah. Until next time, I have been your host, Review Cultist.
I'm Mikey, the stands for Evil.
And I'm the gamer in yellow.
And this has been Al Dente Rigamortis. Sleep well.